Flying over the Atlantic Ocean, your instruments suddenly fail. The radio goes silent. Moments later, you're gone. No distress call, no wreckage, no survivors. Welcome to the Bermuda Triangle. But did any of this actually happen? Before we get into the disappearances, let's actually locate this place, because most people who talk about it couldn't point to it on a map. The Bermuda Triangle is a rough triangular region in the western Atlantic Ocean, marked by 3 points: Miami, Florida, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and the island of Bermuda. It's not an official geographic designation. There's no line on a real map, no government body that defines its exact borders. Different writers over the decades have drawn the triangle differently. Some make it small, some stretch it out to cover a huge chunk of ocean. So why did this specific patch of water become the most famous cursed region on Earth? It comes down to one thing: heavily trafficked shipping and flight routes, combined with a string of disappearances in the 20th century that got wrapped into a single terrifying narrative. And that narrative had a name attached to it by 1964, when a magazine writer coined the term Bermuda Triangle for the first time. Once the area had a name, every strange event in that stretch of ocean got filed under the same mysterious label. Let's talk about the incidents that built this legend. First, Flight 19, December 1945. 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale on a routine training mission. Partway through, the flight leader radioed that his compass wasn't working, that nothing looked familiar, that he wasn't sure which direction was which. The flight never returned. Search planes went out that same night, and one of them, a Mariner aircraft carrying 13 men, vanished too. No wreckage from Flight 19 was ever found. Then there's the USS Cyclops. In 1918, this enormous Navy cargo ship left Barbados, fully loaded, headed for Baltimore. It never arrived. No distress signal, no debris. 309 people gone without a single trace. One of the largest non-combat losses in U.S. naval history. Add to that decades of missing yachts, missing cargo ships, and small aircraft that took off and were simply never heard from again, and you can see how this region built a reputation. There's also the Ellen Austin, a ship supposedly found drifting and abandoned in the late 1800s, with a boarding crew sent aboard to sail it back. A crew that then vanished too, according to the story. And the Star Tiger and Star Ariel, 2 commercial airliners lost in 1948 and 1949, both disappearing on routine flights with no wreckage ever recovered. Each of these stories, told on its own, sounds unsettling enough. But once they all got filed under one label, the Bermuda Triangle, readers stopped treating them as separate tragedies and started treating them as data points in a single, ongoing mystery. Taken individually, these are tragic, unexplained losses, many of them from an era with far weaker radio communication, no satellite tracking, and far less accurate weather forecasting than we have today. Stacked together under one dramatic name, they start to feel like something else entirely. Naturally, when something feels unexplainable, people reach for extraordinary explanations. And the Bermuda Triangle has inspired some of the most creative ones in modern folklore. Some believe aliens are responsible, abducting ships and planes for study. Others point to Atlantis, the legendary lost city, theorizing that ancient technology beneath the waves interferes with modern instruments. There are sea monster theories, dating back to old sailor folklore about creatures capable of dragging entire ships underwater. Some claim the triangle is a time portal, a rip in reality that pulls vessels into another era entirely. Others focus on magnetic anomalies, insisting that ship and plane instruments malfunction because of some unexplained magnetic force unique to the region. And some point to secret government experiments, the most famous being the so-called Philadelphia experiment, a story claiming the U.S. Navy once tried to make a ship invisible and accidentally teleported it, with the tale later getting tied into Bermuda Triangle lore. We're not here to laugh at any of this. People believe these theories because the alternative, that tragedy can happen for mundane, painful reasons, is somehow less satisfying than a mystery with a shape to it. But here's something strange. Scientists don't actually agree that the Bermuda Triangle is unusually dangerous at all.
Like, share, and subscribe!
So if it's not aliens, time portals, or ancient cities, what's actually going on in this stretch of ocean? Start with weather. This region sits directly in the path of the Atlantic hurricane belt. Sudden violent storms are common, and before modern satellite tracking, ships and planes could sail straight into weather systems with almost no warning. Then there's the Gulf Stream, one of the strongest ocean currents on Earth, running right through this area. It moves fast, it's unpredictable near the surface, and it can carry wreckage or debris away from a crash site within hours, which explains why searchers so often found nothing, even after a confirmed loss. There's also simple human error. Flight 19's own flight leader was known to have a history of getting disoriented, and investigators later concluded the disappearance was most likely caused by navigational mistakes compounded by worsening weather, not anything supernatural. And then there's traffic. The Bermuda Triangle sits along some of the busiest shipping and flight corridors in the world. More boats and planes pass through this region than almost anywhere else on the planet. More traffic statistically means more accidents, simply by volume, the same way a busy highway sees more crashes than a quiet back road, without the highway being cursed. One more theory worth mentioning: methane gas. Some researchers proposed that methane trapped under the seafloor could erupt in large bubbles, reducing water density enough to sink a ship almost instantly, or even disrupt aircraft engines. It's a genuinely interesting hypothesis, and small-scale lab experiments have shown gas plumes can sink scale model boats. But there's no solid evidence of large methane eruptions actually occurring in the Bermuda Triangle's history. It remains an unproven theory, not a confirmed explanation. There's also the magnetic compass issue, and this one is actually rooted in something real. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the very few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north line up almost perfectly, along what's called the agonic line. Everywhere else, sailors and pilots need to correct for the difference between the two. In this region, some navigators historically failed to make that correction when they should have, or made it when they shouldn't have, creating exactly the kind of confusion that could send a plane like Flight 19 further off course, believing its instruments had failed, when really human calculation had. So the magnetic anomaly isn't a mysterious force pulling ships astray. It's a real geographic quirk that made a specific, ordinary kind of navigational mistake more likely. Here's where this story gets genuinely interesting. What if the Bermuda Triangle isn't more dangerous than anywhere else? Insurance giant Lloyd's of London, whose entire business depends on accurately calculating risk, examined loss records for the region and found no statistical evidence that the Bermuda Triangle has a higher rate of shipping losses than any other heavily traveled part of the ocean. The U.S. Coast Guard has stated something similar, that the number of incidents in the triangle is consistent with the sheer amount of traffic passing through it, not evidence of unusual danger. Researcher Larry Kusha spent years digging through the original incident reports behind the most famous Bermuda Triangle stories. He found cases where ships listed as mysteriously vanished had actually been caught in documented storms, cases where wreckage had been found and reported, but that detail simply got left out of later retellings. Cases where the location or date of an incident was wrong in almost every published account, copied and recopied from one book to the next. In other words, many of the unexplainable disappearances weren't unexplained at all. They were retold again and again, with the boring parts quietly edited out. So here's the real question. The biggest mystery here may not be the Bermuda Triangle itself. It may be why millions of people still believe it's cursed, decades after the statistics said otherwise. The Bermuda Triangle isn't mysterious because of disappearing ships. It's mysterious because our brains remember extraordinary stories far better than ordinary explanations. A ship lost in a storm is forgettable. A ship swallowed by a mysterious force is unforgettable, even when the storm is the real answer. We came looking for the truth about the Bermuda Triangle, but what we found raises an even bigger question. What other mysteries have we been getting wrong? If you want to find out, like, share, and subscribe to The Blind Spot, because this mystery is only the beginning.